Hello and welcome to First Geek 411 Book Club. I'm super excited to be talking about Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere, and there's a good chance that I'm so excited I'm gonna forget how to host, but we're gonna have fun anyways. I'm Shanine, and with me I have my mind twin, Emma.
Hi, we think a lot alike because once again, one of her questions is one of my favorite quotes.
Every time.
And Cameron.
Hello, hello. I'm excited. This was a new one for me. So,
Yay.
Same here.
And Chris.
I'm just here to offer contrarian opinions.
Typical.
I feel like that could be a name
Naturally.
tag for Chris. Like,
You guys are all agreeing too much. I'm just going to throw this out there.
yeah, needs more squid.
All right, so before we get started, you can find us at all the social medias as One Geek 411. Let us know if you have any topics you want us to discuss, say hi, or recommend a book for book club. Come chat with us at our Discord server or send us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out the show notes on our website, onegeek411.com, and catch our regular podcast on Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time. And find videos on our YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And check out our sweet, sweet merch at our Redbubble store. So, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Here is a quick synopsis. Richard Mayhew inadvertently gets dragged into the mysterious world of London below, where the people who fall through the cracks end up, when he helps an injured girl named Dor. His perfectly normal life suddenly disappears and is now full of magic, assassins, monsters, and angels. He joins Dor in her quest to avenge her family and find his own way back to his world and his life. And I realized that last book club, when I said that we were going to be reading Neverwhere, basically everything that I said about the book after that was very false. So
What'd you say about the book?
just a
Yeah.
total addendum.
I need to go back and re-listen to that last portion.
Well, let me tell you. I said it was not Neil Gaiman's first novel, which, like, technically it wasn't. His first one was Good Omens with Terry Pratchett, but this was his first solo novel.
Yeah.
And I said that the BBC miniseries came out in the 70s, and it was actually 1996. So
Oh.
Almost.
close. Um,
I like
so just don't
20
listen
years.
to me. And
It's a big technology difference there.
Yeah.
I have the real facts this time. So, and this is the important one, anyways. So,
Yeah.
But yes, so this did actually begin as a BBC miniseries. I have a quote from Neil Gaiman's introduction that says, "Neverwhere as a novel began for me as we started making the BBC TV series of the same name, more or less as a way to keep my sanity. With every scene that was cut, every line that vanished, everything that was simply changed, I'd announce, 'Not a problem, I'll put it back in the novel,' and thus regain my equilibrium. This went on until the day that the producer came over and said, 'We're cutting the scene on page 24, and if you say I'll put it back in the novel, I'll kill you.' After that, I only thought it." So, I enjoyed that.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
And I have seen the miniseries. You can watch almost all of it on YouTube. There's 6 parts, and the 4th part is not on YouTube. So
Why couldn't it be the 6th?
kind of the worst, but
Yeah, I'm sure nothing important happens in the 4th episode.
absolutely not. It's not like all of the major things happening in that episode at
Just
all.
the part where he's thinking he's going crazy.
Yeah.
That's all.
But I did manage to get it from the library. I was thinking about buying it and then found out it was like $70 and was like,
Ooh.
Maybe not.
But I got it from the library and it's super cheesy, but I think worth a watch. And And they also did a radio drama of it in 2013
It has
that
like
includes
everyone
names.
cool.
Yeah, James McAvoy, Natalie Dormer, Christopher Lee, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh man.
And it's fantastic. So it's available on Audible for sure.
I'm going to be honest. I almost just did that when I realized that I read a different, or I had previously read a different book that wasn't this one. I was very close to just doing that and calling it and being like, yeah, this will be fine.
It's actually, I basically read the book, watched the show, and listened to the radio drama all within like a month.
Mm-hmm.
They're all very close. You could have gotten away with it.
If only.
Yeah.
It's like the one time I choose to just actually read the book.
I know. I'm like, you could have cheated.
Yeah.
So for the first time readers, what are your first impressions?
I very much enjoyed it. It was a much more pleasant read than I was expecting. I was thinking about it on Tuesday after I finished it, I think it was. And I came up with a statement to summarize it as a complicated story that benefits from a simplistic writing style. So that is my very brief synopsis and summary of written very well and benefits from being simple.
I agree. I really liked this. I don't think that it's anything necessarily like insane, like literary wise. But it definitely kept me engaged the whole time. I really enjoyed the characters and I really enjoyed the humor. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that like, I kind of talked about it on the Monday podcast, but like, I definitely enjoyed it a lot. And I was not necessarily expecting, to get into it as much as I did. Because I tend to not like modern fantasy as much. I say after like, 2 of my 3 things were like alternate history takes on modern settings, but like, but yeah, so I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I'm not a first time reader, so.
Okay. So for those of us who have read this book before, what did you remember about the story? And how was it reading it a second time?
Reading it a second, third time, like every time I read it, I dislike Richard more and more.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that's a common occurrence with you, Chris.
And it's mostly because he acts contrary to what I would do. Like so often, I'm just like, you're dumb. But that's also coming from me who consumes a lot of isekai anime.
Yeah.
But all in all, like I enjoy this, and I wish, like, I like the concept of this second world of London, but I wish, like, every time I read it, it's like I need more details on how this works.
See, in my opinion, I feel like that's where it benefits.
For your first time reading it, yeah, it's great.
Save it. Read first impressions.
Yeah. That's where I think it benefits from.
Well, for me, as I was like mentioning that I was fully immersed in this story for like a month straight, I remembered pretty much all of it, I think.
Right.
There was one part I forgot that I'll talk about later, but basically all the major points I remembered. So it was obviously a different experience not having like the big reveal stuff at the end, but I think it was still like the world is so rich that I didn't mind it. Like it didn't feel like it took away from anything really. And I just had a super great time like reading it a second time and noticing all like the foreshadowing things and stuff. like in the first chapter, the first few chapters, there's all these locations that are mentioned, and I'm sitting there like, like Earl's Court and Marble Arch and Blackfriars and Angel and Old Bailey and Hammersmith and Shepherd's Bush and Islington and Knightsbridge, and I'm like, what? And I also noticed this time through that it both begins and ends with an old woman and an umbrella.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
I thought that was interesting. Bit of a circle plot there. And yeah, I just, as a writer, super appreciated Gaiman's craft and language magic the whole time. Like, I just read a sentence and I'm like, that was a really good sentence. Yeah, it was really fun reading it a second time. At this point, I want everyone to show off your books. So we have a few different covers. Well, a couple.
Yeah, we have
just two.
Yeah, just
two different covers.
Yes.
For Chris and Cameron, you have illustrated versions. Do you have any favorite illustrations?
I think in general, most of them were either like character portraits or these kind of like emphasis things around the sides of the text that I thought were really cool. In general, like there was definitely some that I really liked. Like Here's Old Bailey. And it's like it was just like cool to kind of see this artist's like rendition of what they think the characters would look like, especially with how like over the top the characters are. And so I think it was that's something that like there's not like a specific one that jumps out, but I kind of liked that theme of getting to see those representations.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, like, granted, this is an illustrated version. Like, it's done in such a way that, like, if you're a power, like, if you're just reading, like, you don't necessarily pay as much attention to them. It's like they are nice little additions, but it's kind of like the illustrated versions of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and stuff. It's like, yeah, they're there, but it is still just this artist's portrayal of the character. And we should mention the artist is Chris Riddell. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he does a lot of illustrations with Neil Gaiman stuff. He has a cool style. So something I really like the urban fantasy aspect of this book. Like I feel like I haven't read a lot of urban fantasy, but I really like it. And I also like that it's kind of a small scale fantasy story. Like you don't really, it just seems like this one girl and this one guy like trying to meet their own goals, not like, we have to save the whole world.
Yeah.
So have
it's
you
a
read
little snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. Have you read other books like this?
I mean, I've read Neil Gaiman before. I read Good Omens, which is one of my favorite books. But not. I think this is one of the first sort of urban fantasy books I've ever read. So I'm usually either all in or all out. But I really enjoyed it. So.
I think for me, I've read a couple things like it here and there. Kind of to what you were saying. This reminded me a lot of almost like some of the side movies from like MCU kind of thing, where it's like, here's the stakes and the stakes matter, but really they are just kind of, it's very much like this character focused story. And so I think in that regard, like that's, I don't think something that we necessarily see a lot in fantasy, but I think it's something fantasy could use a lot more of. I think that I think it's always the like what's the next big bad? What's the next world-ending threat across all genres of fantasy? And while there definitely would have been problems, like the stakes in this book weren't really even that high should the characters have failed for them. Like, which I think is really interesting.
And yet it was still enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was still gripping, even though it wasn't like, oh, the world's gonna end. It was like, the way it's written, you're still invested in what's going on.
Harry Potter? I'd say that Harry Potter probably has the closest, like, has urban fantasy characteristics to a good portion of it. Like, obviously with Diagon Alley, that's probably the closest I've come to, like, being in the urban fantasy genre, are things that have those ideas, but not like
For sure.
just that. Yeah.
Get another hidden world in London and elsewhere.
I'm gonna go find all the hidden worlds in London.
It's very populated.
Yes.
It's a very popular setting for a hidden world.
I think the other urban fantasy books that I've read are, I think, Cassandra Clare's like Shadowhunter series, which she has a few different series in that world, and my favorite ones are like the ones set in Victorian England, to no one's surprise.
No.
What?
So, what was your favorite part of Neverwhere?
I mean, I guess this is more of a technical thing than, like, specifically, but the way Neil Gaiman described a lot of the settings was pretty fun, because it gave some sort of whimsical feeling to the world of London below. Of, like, afterwards, Richard couldn't say for certain if it was X, Y, or Z. But in the moment, or whatever, just like the way things were described was something I really enjoyed. But I really, like, specifically, I really enjoyed, like, that one part where they were going to the museum train stop, and he was just like, there is no train stop at the museum. But there is. It was closed.
Things like that
30
just
years
made me
ago.
hate him, though.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it,
I'm just like,
personally.
it's like, dude, it's like, what about this has made you realize that this isn't your world anymore? But no, you keep it like, no, that's not a thing. Like,
You've got to realize, though, that Richard is a very bland personality.
Yes.
Unlike
Yes.
the four of us sitting here. He is not a nerd who's into science fiction. Like, he just
You
wants
don't
to
have
go
to
live out
be.
his corporate life, and is very bland, and his fiance, like, takes him to museums on the weekend.
there's a difference
He
between
doesn't
being bland
think
and
about
dumb.
that kind of stuff.
I don't know. I think there's a certain level of maybe being in shock, and
Yeah.
different
Yeah, but
things
how
are
long
different.
before that shock just makes you shut your mouth?
Eventually, I didn't see.
like,
He
These
does
people have shown you-
eventually
But there's
shut his
one.
mouth. Okay,
It's like literally-
he does eventually shut his mouth and figure it out.
Not really.
I don't have it saved anymore, but there is a quote in this book that says he was beginning to trust his instincts more and accept that the answers that people put in front of him, no matter how unlikely, were in fact the answers.
Right, yes.
So he does come to accept it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's just super slow, which makes him dumb.
Yeah.
It's just like,
It's not like what's his
It was a
face from
lot.
Ready
It was a
Player
lot.
One, where
it's
you
like, did
just
these guys
look
ask you?
at
No,
his
they're
face
leading
through
you.
the
Just
2
follow.
books.
Shut your mouth and follow, because you don't know this world like they do. It's like, there's no. It's like, stop it, Richard.
At least he comes to his sensibilities, okay?
There are in this book there are stupid questions.
All right.
So I'll say
Before we
for me,
hammer on Richard anymore. yes.
one of my favorite parts, I really enjoyed the museum. I liked the idea and kind of for however the magic or whatever works, where if you fell through the cracks, you can kind of only be perceived while you're talking to someone, and immediately they forget you. And so I really liked that. We got to see it with Jessica in the museum, where she's like, wait, why are they here? And is actually able to like point them out. Security gets involved. But then again, as soon as something happens, they immediately forget what all they're doing. And then it's like, oh, why is security in the middle of the floor? Like, I really liked that.
No.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. And it went longer than I expected, which I liked, because up until that point, it's like legitimately been like, as soon as somebody turns their back, they completely forget. So I did like that we kind of got to see kind of the extents of what that could be, just from like a world building perspective. But yeah, I liked that scene as a whole. And I liked the tension between Richard and Jess there.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite part is definitely the portion where he's going crazy.
So the whole book got it.
Well, I mean, like where he's pretty much like he's hallucinating, talking to himself, talking to Gary, talking to him, Gary as himself situation, and he thinks that he's pretty much hallucinating all this. It's like a trial or whatever, and
That was a very
The
nice change
ordeal.
of pace
because it made
for the book.
so much sense, like that based on
Yeah.
everything that's happening. This is the most real reaction that makes sense to me. Like, out of everything that you've been through so far, this makes sense. Your dumb questions, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone so far. I'm just like, yeah, that was great.
I am gonna really quickly sort of tag on to what Chris was just saying in my random way of, this book was very well paced. Of like something I enjoyed
agree.
about it. It was super well paced. Things happened. They didn't drag, and things weren't over. Like, jokes weren't overly done, or like different themes weren't overly done, and it was super well paced. Like, the ordeal was in like the perfect spot to sort of change things up a little bit, while also sort of cluing you into what was happening inside his head. So that was just my one extra tidbit. Very well paced, which made it very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked the market scenes. We kind of get like this concentrated view of the world and like who all is in it and their role in it, and just the whole cast of everything.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
All right. Besides Richard, any least favorite parts?
I mean, I don't think so for me overall. I mean, I may find a least favorite part if/when I read it through a second time, but there wasn't, again, unlike with Ready Player 1 and 2, I was never just sitting there going, oh, come on. Like, I was like, okay, like, I'm feeling this. So there's really nothing that jumps out for me.
I think my most disappointing part was the battle with the beast. Not necessarily that it was bad. It felt like something that should have been a bigger deal.
It was anticlimactic.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Where it's like, this is literally what like Hunter had been building her life towards. And like, I mean, and he kind of goes into it with the writing, but the idea that the dance and the dance ends. And I know it's just kind of one of those that I was just like, well, I feel like maybe we could have been a little bit more prepared for this event. But here we are. So, and again, like I said, I say that not to say that it was bad, just that it didn't quite live up to expectations.
There are some parts of the book that like where that focused like when it flashed to Mr. Croup and Vandemar, I'm like, this isn't necessary. I don't care about these guys in that way. Like sometimes the flashes are like, ooh, this is a good part of the story, and then other parts I'm like, well, that felt unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, my least favorite part was like the only part of the novel that I forgot about from my first reading.
You looked away and it
says
just wasn't there
something.
anymore.
It was the part with Serpentine. And
yeah,
it's not that it was like uninteresting. Like I like having more characters and more like there's other things going on in London below and stuff like that. But I just like completely forgot about it from my first reading and was like, oh.
Not gonna lie, I forgot about it in 3 weeks until you just mentioned it.
It seemed unnecessary. And like she shows up again after the beast fight, but it's just kind of like, why are you here? Like it's one of those that and that was probably my number 2 least favorite was the stuff with Serpentine.
Yeah.
Because again, it was interesting world building, but it didn't feel like it mattered. It's like going back to what you said earlier, Shanine, from like the intro. It's like, I see why this would be that scene in specific. You would cut that from a movie or from a series, that kind of thing. And that's one of the things that kind of I thought as I was going through that, which is like, this just feels like it's another stop.
Like in film, it felt like something that would be added to give Hunter more depth.
It would be.
But
the only reason they would add it in a film is for character depth.
Right. And so that's definitely how that feels thinking back to it. Also, you had to allude to the spear, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
I guess that's it. You know, you could have just revealed it all in that one scene, but.
Right. Who were your favorite characters, both major and minor?
I liked Old Bailey.
Yeah.
He was a fun, just sort of kooky side character who like just showed up when the main characters needed him. He was just like that one guy that they call upon. Kind of like a little trolley man. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Marquise. The Cabas.
Yeah.
The Cabas.
Yes.
And part of it is because I did read the rest.
Yeah.
Him in his coat.
Story.
Yeah, the little short story.
Yeah.
But also like I'm like this guy's the man. He knows what's up.
Yeah, he's very cool.
Trading favors. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the Marquis as well, and Door.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when series give us like a really unique superpower. Because you kind of get that idea.
Opening doors.
Yeah, like opening and creating doors and all these kind of things. So it kind of leaves into the like, well, what could you do with this? Whereas I feel like a lot of times when we're so used to like super speed, super strength, that it's just kind of like, cool, you're going to punch something really hard. Got it. But I really liked that. And I liked that between them, we kind of get this like look into the world where they're not like surprised by things. And I liked that. Like they don't know things and they need to figure it out. But like in general, they're kind of our anchors into the world as a like lived in space.
Yeah.
That like someone as from such an important family as Door wouldn't be confused at who this random faction was. She would know. And I really liked that they kind of provided that foundation for the novel.
I agree. Like, for all the reasons you said, I love Door.
For like a minor character, I really like the anesthesia too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the disappointing parts of the book, though. It's like, I need to know what happens to her.
That could be another like short story.
Mhm.
Like I guess this does go back to like it's a very simplistic in terms of world building, but there are plenty of short stories that he could write that sort of stem off from this.
Which he needs
that
to.
It would, yeah, that it would just like it would be fun to write a collection of short stories that are just sort of branch off from this.
Mhm.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't need like a ton of like. I don't need to know how like everything works. That's not what I meant when early.
Yeah.
It's like I need to know. I need more.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm on the same page as you with that. Like, I'm definitely gonna read when the Marquis got his coat back, because then it's just like I want more. But like, I would definitely enjoy like a collection of short stories for characters like Anesthesia and whoever else.
Okay, I feel like we have discussed characters that you were supposed to like that you didn't.
I need to elaborate more though.
Go on, Chris.
Okay, so Richard's the person that you're watching. Like, he's like the family member that you try to watch a movie with that asks questions throughout the entire thing. It's like, oh, what? Well, if you watch, you'd find out. That's Richard.
Sounds like my mom.
You know, and it's just like, and that's really what I want to throw out there. That's why I don't like him, because it's like even like the part where he's meeting what's his face, the angel dude. It's like, oh, it interjects in there. Well, I never believed in angel. I refuse to. It's like, well, you're dumb. Like a real angel is above. It's like, well, so far the language has not been the barrier here. Definitely has not been language that's the barrier. Like, everything seems to be on a 1-to-1 ratio here. So
I don't know. I still like Richard. I find his responses incredibly realistic.
Yeah.
Compared to like all other books where they enter a new fantasy world and they're like, oh, cool, a new place.
And they just shrug it off.
Like, at
I
first
find that
it does.
more unbelievable when they just shrug it off and go with it.
I don't expect him to shrug it off. Like, when he first enters, he's following the Marquise and he's like, it's deadly. He's like, looks down. Like, his reaction's there. Okay. But it keeps going like through the very end of pretty much throughout the entire thing.
And I'll say on it,
because
I think I'm kind of more on Chris's side, but I'll say for me, what it seemed like is that Richard was always trying to correct people and then just kept being wrong compared to being inquisitive about what was happening.
Yes.
Like, it felt like he wasn't asking questions. He was just saying, no, there's not a stop at the British Museum. It's like, well, maybe there is. Like, it's one of those.
Yeah.
And I definitely like, I think a lot of series do that or for their like audience touch base character, they do that. They have them be inquisitive. They have them ask questions. They have them seek out more knowledge. And Richard just kind of didn't seem that way.
Yeah.
But I also like, I didn't find him as like, I don't know if annoying is how Chris would say. I didn't find him as like annoying that way, but there were definitely moments that I'm like, dude, just ask a question.
Yeah.
Like, just be like, hey, like, I don't get it. Like, I've been here for a week. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. I know Neil Gaiman read the audiobook, like was the guy who read it. So I'm just curious to like listen to the audiobook and see how he sort of reads it out loud, because that may like sort of change how some of those moments are interpreted, just with tone and inflection as the author is the one reading the thing that he wrote. Like, he may end up presenting it verbally in a way that comes across that way, but at least in terms of in my head how I was reading it, like I was just like, yeah, like I would say the same thing.
I don't know. I still don't agree with Chris and Cameron. I think I think like on top of just discovering a new world, like he's also lost his whole life.
Yeah.
And I think that would just be so
Trauma.
horribly traumatic and surreal. And he's super in denial about all of it. And like there's definitely parts where he's like starting to wonder, like maybe they know what they're talking about, but he just tries to push it from his mind. And like Cameron, like what you were saying with him like trying to give his own answers for a lot of things instead of asking, I'm going to jump ahead to one of our later questions because I'm
How dare you?
in charge, and I'm
This
just
is what
like
happened.
as we're talking about it,
Time to derail this. No, I'm just
wondering.
kidding.
I'm not derailing it because I'm steering.
No, I'm saying I'm about to. No, I'm just kidding.
Can't. I'll steer over you.
That's why I like to hear Shanine.
Take control, Shanine.
So I'm connecting things in my mind as we're talking about it, and we'll jump to Emma's favorite quote, which is repeated several times throughout the book. Sometimes there is nothing you can do. So knowing what we know about Richard and who he is, what do you think Richard actually thinks about this statement?
I feel like Richard's the type of person that's never tried to control anything in his life.
Yeah, and I'll definitely agree and like piggyback off that. Like, I think Richard in general, and I don't remember the exact times where this came up in the book, but like just based on what we get from it, Richard, he seems like the person that like, well, there was nothing I could do, officer. It just happened. And it's like, well, no, you clearly could have braked or done something, or like you could have done like taken an action. He very much seemed like even got like using like his relationship with Jess as an example. Like they go to museums every weekend because he won't say that he doesn't like doing that.
Yeah.
He just coasts.
Like, he's like, there's nothing you can do. It's like, well, you could very easily.
There is.
Yeah,
He's
voice
John
your
Mulaney.
opinion.
I was over on the bench.
I was on the bench, and you didn't help.
But
I was on
was
the
over
bench.
on the bench.
I mean, yeah, he's engaged to someone that he doesn't really seem to get along with, even.
Right.
Like,
and who also doesn't seem to like him. So it's like a bit on it's one of those.
It's on
Yeah.
both of them.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie
Well,
though,
and you
like,
do,
I like
yeah.
Jess.
But you do see that sort of at the end, though, where he does start to take charge, where she's, I don't want to say comes crawling back, because she doesn't really come crawling back, but she's like,
She didn't know what happened.
maybe we can try again. And he's just like, no, we're not going to
Yeah.
try again. Like,
And let's face it, Jess is the real winner because of that.
yeah.
but yeah, I think Richard starts out very much as someone who's just letting life happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's
And-
a follower. He's very much a
Yep.
follower.
Like there's parts in the book like are especially like after all the events and everything, it's like still bent on returning. It's like throughout all of this, like people ask like who your friends are and stuff. And he's like, well, I've got Gary, kind of. Is Gary my friend? No,
Yeah.
it's just like, but he's still.
They give me trolls. The
he's still-
people at the office give me a little
He
trolls.
still wants to get back to it, and it talks about it's like, well, there are those who have tried to return and like live a half life. It's like, Richard, you were already living a half life. Sorry, dude.
And I mean, just to build off that, like he gets a key to literal reality,
And he
And
just
he-
wants to go home.
and he just makes himself a partner at the firm. Like he's not even like in charge. He's just a partner. That very much reminded me of there's a scene in Scrubs. That's one of JD's fantasies. And the line Turk says, holy inferiority complex Batman. Oh no, JD says to Turk, holy inferiority complex Batman. I'm the sidekick in my own fantasy. And it's like, that's very much how Richard felt, where like, he's just, whoop, I guess I'll just be the side. I'll just help, but not even like really help, but just kind of be here. I was present.
I showed up. I was over on the bench.
John Mulaney is so quotable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in regards to sometimes there's nothing you can do, what do you think Gaiman thinks about this statement?
I think, at least in terms of some of this other stuff of his that I've read, I feel like for Gaiman, like it's sort of the opposite of there's always something you can do. It may not be a solution to the problem, but you can always go help the person over on the side who got injured.
Get off the bench.
Get off the bench. There's always something to do. Like, there's never nothing to do. There's always something to do. Just sort of, I mean, that's also just thinking of his vast collection of books in general and what I know of them, as well as sort of the conclusion of this one. Like, I do feel like, I mean, I don't want to put words in the mouth of a man I've never spoken with a day in my life so far, but you know, it'd be great if that were to change.
I'm tweeting him right now.
Please, I'm
Adam
a
into the
film
call.
student. I'm trying to make my way in the world.
Oh, he's
Please.
available.
I love your stuff.
Give me just a moment. I just sent him a link. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what I forgot.
That's what I've been planning these 3 weeks, guys. Ta-da! No, I'm just kidding.
Wow, I really appreciate it, Chris.
Tease me.
But hey, if I ever do actually work with him, I will try and scrounge something up for you, Shanine.
I would cry.
But yeah, I do
Shanine,
think
you're supposed to be hosting this.
yeah,
Can't.
I'll circle back around for you. My basic conclusion is I feel like Gaiman's thought is there's always something to do and get off the bench and go do it. You can be a lowly, basic company man who ends up in the underground, and you're gonna go do something about it.
I feel like if he thought that sometimes things just happen, he wouldn't be a very good writer.
Yeah.
like that does not write a good book.
And I think that there's plenty of times throughout this book that, you know, there is nothing that Richard could do, but there's something someone could do. And I feel like that's one of the big things that we see, even at the end with the final confrontation of it's like, well, there is something Dor can do. Like there's that kind of thing where it's like one of the things that I was kind of nervous about this book going into it that I really enjoyed was that Richard very much isn't like the knight in shining armor ever.
No.
It is really the story about Dor and the Marquis, and really, I mean, and mostly Dor, but like, and I thought that was really interesting, and I liked that a lot because we don't all get to be the main character, but that doesn't mean that we can't help the main character achieve their goal. And whatever
case,
it is that's
the
going
main
on.
character was a sub character.
Yeah.
Sit down, shut up, like the Marquis asked.
All right. Any final thoughts on sometimes there's nothing you can do, or did we pretty much cover it?
Seems
Okay.
good to me.
Hopping back up, who was the best villainous character, in your opinion?
I mean, I guess for me, it's got to be Croup and what's his face,
Vandemar.
Vandemar. I knew I needed to get like a list of character names just going into this. I knew there's no way I was going to make it through this book. I feel like they were really interesting. I liked their take on things.
Mhm.
And I liked how happily evil they were.
Yeah.
Like they're so unapologetic for who they are. And like
and they
even
had this great little relationship. Too.
yeah, they have
there
this
was
like
great back and forth.
exactly. And I liked that like even at the end where they get got, like it's so obvious that it's gonna happen just because of how their characters have been built up. It's so obvious that they're not gonna trust like Islington to wait for their reward. They're not gonna get it. And it's like it's so obvious that that's gonna lead to their demise. And then it happens and it's like, told you. And they're just so like delightfully them. And I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that we never really find out like who or what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've been around for an unknown amount of time, and they're
Very
not
long
human.
time.
Since
But-
Troy.
Well, like, are they
Yeah.
immortal or are they time travelers?
Right.
Yeah.
Or are things just
or,
timey-wimey?
like
That was one of
what
the things that I was really
are they?
unsure about too. Like
It's
from
actually
like
just set in the Doctor Who verse. Okay.
yeah, from like a metaphysics standpoint. If it's like, does
Yeah.
time just pass differently in London Underground? And I was like,
It does,
like,
yeah.
I mean, technically, because it's like day in periods like where he transitions from, night in London
Mhm.
above.
I have a quote.
I have a quote.
So this is Dor speaking. There are little bubbles of old time in London where things and places stay the same, like bubbles in amber, she explained. There's a lot of time in London and it has to go somewhere. It doesn't all get used up at once.
and stuff like that are things that I really enjoy from a world building standpoint. Because that doesn't really say anything, but it sounds really cool and really interesting, and I want to know more about that. And so like that's like it's one of those that makes just enough sense to be great, like world building, but not enough sense to like lead to a plot hole down the road. Like
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah.
You're not over explaining things. So
Yeah.
Your response is basically what Richard's was.
right.
Yeah.
That almost made sense.
Yeah.
One thing I like about Krupp and Vandermeer too is I wouldn't say they're like completely evil. They're just really good at their job.
Yeah.
They're just
the whole
mercenaries. They're
time,
just it's like
They're just.
I
Yeah.
didn't seek to do this. Someone's paying me, and it's great money. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of the time when I was reading their sections, I was getting, I guess the vibe is the right word, of, I mean, it was these two characters from this like classic literature that you read in English class, where one of them has like a little mouse that he carries around in his pocket, that I think his name is Lenny or something. They gave me this vibe of these two classic English literature characters that
Mhm.
like are like runaways or whatever. That like
They're vagrant workers.
don't know any better or like
What is it called now?
this is why I'm not an English major.
I will say I almost texted or like messaged Janine and was like almost asked if they were animals.
Of Mice and Men.
Like when I first got started, I was like, because like there's so much.
But they're
like,
not evil,
animal
but like
imagery.
yeah, is that what you're referring to? Of Mice and Men with George
Yeah, of
and George
Mice
and
and Men.
Lenny. Lenny
Yeah.
keeps accidentally killing things, but he's not smart, but he's kind-hearted technically, but ends up getting put down because he's kind of dangerous.
Yeah. So it felt kind of like a relationship like that between the two of them, but like their intentions are a little more like they have intentions.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think they are very interesting. And like Cameron said, there's a lot of like animal imagery and stuff around them. And like they look human, but they are very monstery, beastie in their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Mr. Vandermeer is just one that thinks he's smarter than he is. He's the person that, like, has the word of the day thing and he seeks to use that word. You know? He's like, look how big my vocabulary is. It's like, okay, dude.
Oh, croup?
No. Is it Croup?
Croup is
Croup is the wordy one.
Is the wordy one.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Vandemar's.
Mr. Croup. Yeah, Vandemar's cool. Like, he's the actual smart one of the two. He's just like, still talking, are we?
Got
Yeah.
things to do.
Also, like, the little bit of spite he has, it's like, why am I pushing the cart? And you're just sitting there, and you're still talking, and you're just sitting there. And then he takes that out on the cart. I'm like, yeah, understandable. I don't know why you're still with this guy.
Okay, so I briefly want to talk about names throughout the book because so many of the names are like very on point, but somehow still don't seem like overly cheesy somehow.
Yeah. The whole time
Like-
I was thinking of the Victor Von Doom principle from comics, where it's like if you name your kid Von Doom, last name's Von Doom, like you're going to be a villain.
You put Vaughn in front of anything, you're going to be a villain.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Yeah, for example, we have Dora's family. Her father is Lord Portico. Her mother's Portia. Her brother is Arch, and her sister is Ingress.
All different terms for entryways.
Entryways,
Which raises an
passageways, yeah.
interesting
Passageways.
question for the mom. Like, I have questions.
Changed her name.
Yeah.
When you get married, you change your first name.
You must have a. In this family, this is what we do.
I mean, they're a royal family. I mean,
Yeah.
True.
just throwing that out there.
Hunter, we have is literally
hunts
named
things.
Hunter, which toward the end I start to wonder if it's actually her name or just a title that she's come to be known by.
I mean, she's been around a while, so
Yes.
Yeah.
she's as old as her tongue.
I liked that line.
True.
You
I'm as old as
don't
my tongue, but not as old
say.
as my teeth. Or
Or a
or
little
just
young,
older than my teeth.
older than my teeth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah.
it's like, thanks for answering my question.
We also have brother Fuliginous, which means dusty or sooty, and he's one of the Black Friars.
I feel like Neil Gaiman just had a fun time naming the characters in this book.
Definitely. And we have Lamia the Velvet,
Mhm.
named after a Greek mythological monster.
That was one of my favorite ones. I just liked that was again, like knowing what that is, like, oh, this is not working out for you. But it was, to what you said earlier, it's a unique enough name where you
Oh,
or like
interesting.
where I don't necessarily think it's like it's not like it was like Gorgon or like Medusa. or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it is unique enough to where it's not that most common thing, and I really liked that.
Half person, half snake.
Mhm.
Essentially.
Known for eating children, specifically.
Known for eating children.
Also means Richard's a child.
I mean,
Yeah.
timey-wimey, like he might be compared to them.
True.
So yeah, for audio listeners, I'll just read this out. Lamia in ancient Greek mythology was a child-eating monster and in later tradition was regarded as a type of night-hunting spirit. In the earliest stories, Lamia was a beautiful queen of Libya who had an affair with Zeus.
Who didn't have an affair with Zeus?
Right.
I saw this meme the other day where it was like Greek mythology or just whatever, like this big. Greek mythology, if Zeus had just kept to himself, is considerably smaller.
Non-existent. It's like you're not really a part of Greek mythology until you've slept with Zeus. Just saying.
Yeah.
So, based on how Gaiman seems to have been using names throughout the book, what do we think of Anesthesia's name?
I'm gonna be
it
completely
suits
honest.
for her story.
I did not realize that was anesthesia. Like I'm gonna do that. Like I never said it out loud, and I did not realize that's what it was. Like complete honesty. I was just like, that's a name, and I just kept reading. It was too long for me.
It was like that new magic card.
Yes, it's like,
the new Rakdos
name.
magic card, legendary creature.
Yeah.
Well, that's the name.
But yeah, that's great. It fit. Like it helps him with his pain as he gets into the new world. Yeah, completely missed that one.
And it just turned out he had surgery. That's all this
Yeah.
was. The entire book. That's the real twist.
Yeah.
That
He
would
just
be a
went out
twist.
there for a tooth extraction.
Okay, I have a quote.
I have a quote.
There was something deeply tribal about the people, Richard decided. He tried to pick out distinct groups. There were the ones who looked like they had escaped from a historical reenactment society, the ones who reminded him of hippies, the albino people in gray clothes and dark glasses, the polished, dangerous ones in smart suits and black gloves, the huge, almost identical women who walked together in twos and threes and nodded when they saw each other, the tangle-haired ones who looked like they probably lived in sewers and who smelled like hell, and 100 other types and kinds.
He was referring to the sewer people later on. Hey!
So, in this little snippet here, as well as throughout the whole book, obviously, we're introduced to many different groups of people. Which ones were you most intrigued by? Because I found that there were some that I'd read and I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. I wish he would have said more.
Like in general, I feel like that because like he gives this little thing like when in his conversations with Anesthesia about like pretty much what this is it's for the people who fell through the cracks, and he's like, how do you fall through the cracks? Like that's one reason why I'm intrigued about Anesthesia. It's like because she's the one that specifically mentions it. It's like,
Yeah.
how'd you fall through the cracks?
And that group, that whole group even of like rat speakers that they call them, like just that was a part too that I was just curious about. Like, I want to know more about that.
And I think that's something that I love about the book is that he doesn't explain everything. Like I find in some books, like they're trying to do world building and they'll just like explain everything because it's all cool.
And
But,
they
like,
explain too much, and it's like,
yeah, and this is just like they're here. Moving on.
yeah. I'm gonna make this reference again, where Ready Player One explains too much.
Mhm.
This explains not at all, but in a good way.
It's not a good way because he's not doing more.
Disagree.
I mean, he is technically writing a Seven Sisters book or whatever it was. But, like, that's what I mean. Like, it's like, write the story, Neil.
It's not their story though.
Yeah, I
Not.
agree. I really.
I'm
for
not
me,
saying
I
you need
like
to be in this. I'm just saying he needs to write a lot. Like, he needs to write more stories for
Flesh out
this
the world.
world. Yeah,
So
is what I mean.
Arnett.
It's like he didn't need to include it here, but now that he did it this way, he needs to do more.
Yeah. So for the question, I think for me, it's the Earl. Like they have this magic train that's bigger on the inside. and they seem very much as like has-been heroes that are still kind of playing
Heroes.
playing heroes, yeah. And I'm super curious about what all that is. Like, something happened with the Marquis that led to the Earl losing an eye, and like the Earls also dealt with Dor's father, and like all of these politic type things. Like, that's definitely that. Like, if I had to pick one group, I want like the heyday of the Earl,
Yeah.
and whatever like what were they fighting? Like, what is this battle? Like, what are these wars? Is it like what are they fighting over?
He's actually
Like
just
that
hunting a
kind of thing.
boar.
Yeah, the same boar. It just always gets away.
The Earl is just Robert Baratheon, okay?
I kind of like the Velvets. I don't know. They're kind of vampire-y.
Yeah, I thought they were a very fun take on the idea of vampire, of like the I want your warmth, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they definitely picked the right Greek creature to name her after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The serpentine vibes,
Sneaky.
cold-blooded.
All right. What did you think of the narrator?
I'll say, I think Chris said this earlier. I think some of my favorite parts was when the narration jumped and told us about these other things.
Yeah.
And then also some of my like least favorite parts, where it very much seemed like I'm going to go to like a film or like TV show example where it's like, here's the cliffhanger. Now we're going to tell you about something else to make you wait. Like that kind of thing, where it's like, I didn't tune in for this. Like that kind of thing of like, this is the episode that I skip when I rewatch. But then again, it's like, it's sometimes those were really cool scenes. Like it's one of those that like, it's very hit or miss there for me.
Yeah, with the way it is, like, because obviously he wrote this from the miniseries, like, it feels like it was written from a miniseries.
Yeah.
You know, like,
For me,
it's like, let's tell this story. Here's a flashback with this character that gets us all to like to the same point. We're good, and that's how it reads.
yeah. For me, overall, I was like, I'm pretty neutral on Richard. Like, he works well in the role that he has, but I don't like. I'm not overly attached to him as a like a character, but I'm also just not like I hate him or whatever. I'm just like he was a good character for the narrator role, and it was fun to read the story from the context of someone who's not technically the main character of the story. Like, for the sake of this book, he is, but for the story in and of itself, like we were saying earlier, Dor and the Marquis are the main characters. Like, it's their issue that they're trying to fix. But he suited the narrator role pretty well, coming in from an outside perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I wish the story would have happened to Jess instead.
I mean, she could definitely.
She would have been a much better
some
ally.
talking to. She could do with some getting her life and the way she treats people fixed.
But I mean, also like in the overall theme of the story, like we don't know how she would actually react to someone bleeding in the streets, like because she is from London Above. Like we're still trying to figure out how come he gets to react and gets like this strong, which it alludes to at the beginning with the old lady with the umbrella. But you know, it's it's not blatant to her. Like, and we know that. We know that her attention's not completely there because Door's not from London Above. So we, like, I know, like, it at the point we see that, it paints her in this kind of negative light, but like when we see her in the museum at the same time, it's like, well, we don't like it's more so a circumstantial reaction than it's like we don't understand exactly what she's experiencing there, other than she's trying to get her fiance to this event, and there's something that, like, when she lets her mind wander, is no longer the center of her attention, because that's the way her interaction with people from this secondary world operate.
All right. Well, speaking of which, we'll jump ahead a little bit again. Why do you think Richard could see Door?
I think that goes back to what we were saying a little bit earlier, where up to the point in which he like finds Door, he's already living sort of a half-life in some ways. Of like he's already living in some ways in that underworld while existing in the London above. Like, he's just coasting and already in some ways mentally is just not there. In the sense of like he's not loving the life that he's living.
And I agree. I believe he made that reservation. I do.
Yeah. I mean, and I think to go very hard on the name imagery, I think he was looking for a way out. Like, he was looking for a door. Like, and like he was looking for something that wasn't already in front of him, and then when it showed up, he was able to see it.
I think he was cursed by the woman with the that he gave the umbrella to. So that's why you don't get your fortune read.
Rookie mistake.
So other than being cursed, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, but I am going to take it in a completely different direction and say that I think that this is also almost more of a chosen one trope without being explicit about it.
You picked wrong.
I have reasons. When they're with Serpentine, she says to Door that he's your hero. She says he has the look of a hero about him in his eyes. Like, we look at Richard and we don't necessarily see like the hero type, but apparently he is. And
maybe he turns into it. We don't know what happens when he carves that door in the wall, I guess.
I'm not done.
I'm sorry.
And he's having all these like premonitions about the beast and stuff, and is the one who kills it. And he suddenly becomes known as the warrior. I think in the same way that Hunter is known as Hunter. And somehow that's just a role that people are not surprised that he's in all of a sudden. So it's almost, I don't know, there was a prophecy that no one talked about, but it was there.
I mean, I'd agree.
I mean, even going off that too, it builds off the like, Door just needs a door to anyone who can help her. And she doesn't know where she's going, but she falls in front of Richard. It's very much that, like, again, that chosen one of like, well, I just happened to fall in front of the one person that could see me.
Right. And even with the old lady, like, obviously in the prologue, you know, there ain't no London I've ever seen. Kind of situation where it's like, obviously, like, there's a lot of questions about like providence in this world, and that it starts off like literally it's like okay, and then he lives 3 years here, and then all this stuff starts happening.
Right. So, did you find the world and the characters believable?
Yeah.
Because it was so simplistic in the way that like Neil Gaiman didn't over explain or even explain in some cases. It was just like, yeah, this is the thing that's happening and it's gonna happen. Even though Richard, as the narrator, sort of fought against that, like as the author, he was just like, it's gonna happen, and I'm not gonna like throw in any superfluous details.
I can definitely use a kraken in the sewers, though.
Yes, actually, that would like if a kraken were to show up in the sewers, I would have been like, yeah, okay, that works.
It would have just solidified the world. I'd be on my next flight to London. I'm gonna go find this kraken.
Honestly, though, like I actually would have been like, yeah, okay, I can go along with that.
I mean, I think it was so easily believable because he was building off of well-known places already and just like adding a little bit of a magical twist to it. Like, for example, with the Mind the Gap, how like everyone knows Mind the Gap.
Yeah.
But
and then you've got the little tentacles that come out from
in
the
London
gap.
below. It's a bit more of a serious
Like,
problem.
actually, Mind the Gap.
What the sign say?
Yeah, and I'll say for me, going back to what we talked about earlier with time, like it's one of those that it's explained just enough to be like, yeah, okay, but it's not explained enough to be like, well, I have scientific questions about how that would actually work.
Yeah,
I think he pulled from like enough of common world lore that made it believable. Like the idea that, the big bad is ultimately responsible for Atlantis, and, pulling like that revelation is like, okay, just enough of like, but also, yeah, and then possibly maybe that's why he carries on Richard's disbelief for so long, is to just keep that contrast going, to create this world, make this world a little more real, and saying, well, these things are real, technically. And it mentions
Right.
Lucifer. It's got to be real, right?
So, any favorite quotes?
I mean, as mentioned earlier, one of my favorite quotes was mentioned, and so the line that Shanae mentioned, "Sometimes there's nothing you can do," is mentioned a couple of times throughout the book. But the time it was mentioned that I really enjoy was sort of towards the end, where he sort of he's back in his normal life, and he has this moment where he just sort of suddenly realizes that he can predict his whole life from that point forwards. Of like, okay, so like this girl and I from the office are gonna fall in love, we're gonna get married, we're gonna have kids, we're gonna like move to this place and like, retire, whatever, yada yada yada. And then he just stops and goes, and it would not be a bad life. He knew that too. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. And then he eventually, like in the next couple of pages, ends up going back to London below. Like he just like has this breakdown and is like, I don't want a life that's predictable. And he just breaks down and falls through the cracks again. But that was very much like a turning point for him that also just sort of stood out to me. It was simple, but 3 lines or 3 sentences and 2 lines. And that was that. He was just like, sometimes there's nothing you can do. and then he did something about it. He got up off the bench.
Mhm.
So
There's a part of me that dislikes that he was able to return.
yeah,
Like, making a big deal, about, and even Door asking him to stay and everything. He made the wrong choice. And that should have consequences. He chose to return to his half-friend Gary that he kept blowing off for drinks anyway. What's his job in securities? He chose to return to securities. And, he should be stuck. It's his own fault. The Marquise told him that those who return live half lives. Now he has to live a half life.
I'll say for me, some quotes that I really liked. I'm going to just pick one, but kind of as like a representative of the whole. And I really liked Neil's wit when it comes to just like how he described people in situations. And so one of them that I really enjoyed was starts with Richard began, the Marquis. Well, to be honest, he seems a little bit dodgy to me. Door stopped. The steps dead ended into a rough brick wall. She agreed. He's a little bit dodgy in the same way that rats are a little bit covered in fur. And I just like, again, kind of as representative for like the wit as a whole, that like there's some awesome dialogue in this book. And like it's definitely one of those novels that like if I was going to write, this is a lot of how like Neil writes his characters is how I would want like to represent my characters. Like I just loved so much of that back and forth, so much of those one-liners, so much of like all of that. Like there are moments that like I legitimately smile when I'm like, this is a very good line.
Yeah, and I like the interactions, especially with Richard and Door, because like for whatever reason he perceives her as like this naive girl and whatever. And so like when he does that regarding like the talk about the Marquise, he's like condescending and like kind of patronizing in a way. He's like, I don't know if you've noticed this. And so she's like, yeah, I know. And then like all the way through the entire season, it's like, yeah, I have had my own plan this whole time. Don't worry about it. But he perceives her as like someone like, and that's probably why he tags along for as long as he does too, is that he has to protect her just because he found her bleeding when obviously really I don't know what all he did outside of kill the beast. But one of my favorite lines also for from the Marquise is when they're hiring the bodyguards, and Door mentions something. It's like, well, it doesn't look look nice.
Not as impressive as it looks.
Nice in a bodyguard is about useful as the ability to regurgitate whole lobsters. I'm like, yeah, definitely not
Pretty much.
Okay, I'm going to share one more. So this is about Hammersmith. Hammersmith enveloped Richard's hand in one several sizes up. His handshake was enthusiastic, but very gentle, as if he had, in the past, had a number of accidents shaking hands and had practiced it until he got it right.
I love that. I love that. Like it's such a good like good one-liner, great character development, and that one little quote. Like
yeah,
it's so
it's
good.
all you need to like. I got an image of Hagrid in that moment. Like I just sort of pictured him as a Hagrid type character of like
definitely
very gentle, but like your first impression of him is like you're gonna crush me in an instant if I make you mad. But no, he's just like, gonna shake your gentle little hand.
Because I know I can crush it.
Okay, so one more quote to lead us into our next question. This is at the end when he is talking to the woman with the umbrella. Nothing, said Richard. I really don't want anything. Nothing at all. And then he realized how true that was, and how dreadful a thing it had become. Have you ever got everything you ever wanted, and then realized it wasn't what you wanted at all? Have you ever experienced that?
Not that I can think of / remember. But it's a concept I understand.
I think one for me, it's like the buyer's remorse kind of thing, but it's the like I remember like getting my house in Connecticut, and I loved having a house, but man, having a house stressed me out. And like it's one of those that's like, in hindsight, I should have just gotten a little bit nicer of an apartment, and that would have been great. Like it was one of those that I was ready for like another place, and what I thought I wanted was great, but probably would have been okay with not that.
People get what they
Like,
want.
but what'd you say?
I said, people get what they want.
I mean, if what you want is a boring life after you have a key to all reality,
My life has been, I'll take what I can get.
That was applying to grad school for me. I'll take what I can get.
I don't know. I think my experience with this is like, it's not just like, oh, I didn't actually want that. It's like, oh, that was a huge mistake. Not just do I not want that, but now I feel awful.
I need an example, Janine.
No.
See, again, world building. Like in the sequel, we can do all this like character building for Janine for whatever this was through flashbacks. Perfect.
All right.
I'm gonna pester you every week now.
Oh.
Remember that time you said something about getting something that you thought you wanted, but it was a complete mistake? I need to know more.
It was too much ice cream.
Every
Okay.
time.
Story of my life.
All right. So, as we have alluded to before, there are many references to mythology, other stories, etc. What stood out to you?
One of the things that I kept missing is that it felt like they were very much building up to some like much more like mystical things. So like even with like the beast at the end, like you're in a maze, there's all of this like Greek imagery, but it's not a minotaur, it's just the boar. That kind of thing, where there was a lot of those kind of jukes and kind of, again, even like building back to all the animalistic language that's used to describe characters, where it's like, is this person part bird? Like, and it was kind of a lot of that where I kept on expecting more of like a more hard steer into that, but we just kind of never got there, which is fine. But
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, like a lot of the mythology is like just kind of in passing. Like these things have happened in the past. I do like what they did kind of as like a direct allusion to at least Christian elements, like with the fallen
Next
angel.
question, Chris. Save
Oh, what this, like I said, what I mentioned about my answers have just sent me. Okay, we'll wait till the next question. But also, now that Cameron's mentioning this stuff, I want to see this animated by Ghibli. That's all I'm saying. Miyazaki. Like, this would make a great Miyazaki movie.
I'd be down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's got the right sort of casual vibe. Like the casual vibes fit. Kind of like with Totoro, where there's no, like, there's an explanation, but it's just like it's explained, but it doesn't really go beyond that. It's just like, yeah, it happens.
And it would just go really well, like right along those themes of like In Another World, like Spirited Away, like, you know, like it's a very similar premise, and I think Ghibli would do a good job. Just throwing that out there. Not really answering that question since you cut me off, but
Sorry.
Yeah, I also like just like when Hunter describes all of the beasts that she's
Mhm.
killed, like the alligator king in the sewers of New York, bear underneath Berlin, the tiger under Calcutta, like all of these
Mhm.
legendary creatures that everyone kind of knows, but they're not real.
And I really like that from a world building perspective of this idea of all of these other undergrounds that are all connected somehow. And I thought that was a really cool piece of world building.
Mm-hmm.
again, it goes to that idea that like these mythologies are all actually real,
Yeah.
but when they pass from reality to that mythology, it's just taking place in this realm of our world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then one other reference I caught was actually Gaiman referencing another of his works that I didn't notice the first time through because I hadn't read this other work. And it just seemed like a very strange line at the time. And then I read it this time and was like, hold on.
I just picture Shanine now, like all Neil's books open. And all her notes.
Confirm nor deny.
She's got her cork board with the yarn strings.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crack this case wide open.
Oh, wait. Was it the reference to Gabriel?
It was not.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's a spoiler, so I can say it unless anyone has strong objections. Okay.
You're driving this train.
So at one point, Vandemar is just talking about hurting the Marquis, I think. And he says, before you can say Jack Ketch. And if you don't know who Jack Ketch is, that is just a very weird line. And you're like, I guess Jack Ketch is just something short to say. It is actually the name of the villain in the Graveyard Book.
I did think it was just something weird to say.
So, yeah. Which makes me a little interested in like, are we writing from the same universe here? Yeah. Like, I'm interested.
Are we Pixar theorying this?
Yes.
Yes.
So, also highly recommend the Graveyard Book.
It's one of my personal goals in life to like read eventually all of Neil Gaiman's works.
Same.
I mean, I'm very much behind right now. I've read like 2.5 of his things. But
yeah, he does have a lot, to be fair.
My next one is The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
I love that one too.
That's the next one that's sitting on my shelf waiting to be read.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's dark.
Oh, I'm sure. And that one's a relatively short one, at least in my copy. So
yeah, he packs it in though.
I'm sure. Just from the synopsis at the back, but
okay, Chris, you can lead us off. Did you notice any biblical references or theological themes?
Like obviously we have plenty of biblical references, but as part of that mythos world building, so references Lucifer, Gabriel, and kind of in general, but like fallen angels, like that the theme of turning bad and they go hard, and kind of that demonic element, but Yeah, I guess like ultimately this can be like an overall allusion to the concept of spiritual warfare. Like that there are these things that are happening in another realm. I don't know. But it doesn't play off that like deeply. Like it doesn't affect like what's happening here doesn't necessarily affect the above world. Unless you fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm. So a quote that I liked that I saved for this question is when the friars are waiting for the group to show up, and there's a quote of, "So the day became one of waiting, which was, he knew, a sin. Moments were to be experienced. Waiting was a sin against both the time that was still to come and the moments one was currently disregarding." So I liked that quote because of how radically I disagree with it. Like that's definitely one of those things where it's like you got to constantly be doing something. It's like, no, sometimes I say as a person who's really bad at this, like sometimes you do need to just sit and wait and be patient. And
What?
I think that like the idea that was representing here is this like, it's that like you always have to be in this one moment. But well, that's, I mean, that's not what prayer is. That's not, or not what prayer has to be. That's not what like even something like meditation as a whole or patience as a whole or things like that. That was one that jumped out to me.
I don't think that's the point of what the abbot's trying to get at in that sense, though. That you always have to
Okay.
be doing something. It's that living out of expectation in waiting isn't how is the sin. It's like he knows something is coming up and he's waiting for that to happen instead of being present. And that's what he's alluding to more so than you always have to be doing something. It's that you have to be present and active in time, because otherwise if you're always living for what's in the future, I think that's more so the point of that quote than.
I don't see it that way, but I definitely see how you could.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess for me, in terms of the whole book, it does seem kind of like, there's these two separate worlds where one sort of almost like, the whole parallel universe thing, where of course the under London below, like they can all go up and wander around within the city's streets, but no one's going to acknowledge them because like the moment you look away, like you just sort of forget that they're there. And in some ways you can sort of interpret that as like the Holy Spirit and God is just going to be all around, like it's just there. And it's simply a matter of acknowledging it. And like if you go looking for it, you're gonna see it. But if you're not looking for it, you're not gonna like go, oh, like I can see how that's like an act of mercy or um, an act of love. Like if you're not really looking for it, then you're not really gonna see it. But you just turn around and you do see it if you're looking for it. So.
Okay. I'm glad you read that quote, Cameron, because I also had it saved for this section. So
I beat you for once on the quotes.
you did.
It's only been like 8 book clubs.
I do have another quote though, so
Time to one up you.
Richard did not believe in angels. He never had believed in angels. He was damned if he was going to start now. Still, it was much easier not to believe in something when it was not actually looking directly at you and saying your name.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just so fascinated in Richard's determination to not believe. I think he's just very stubborn. He's not dumb. He's just very stubborn.
Mhm.
And when it doesn't fit into his preconceived worldview, he has a very difficult time accepting its existence.
I think he just lacks like self-realization for anything. Like as I mentioned, he has never taken control of it or done like control of anything in his life. Kind of, he's like, I found myself in this relationship and I'm in it. She picked out the ring. I guess the most expensive most money I've ever spent. It's fine. I have nothing to say about this. and so being thrown into this world now is like now he's being asked questions that he feels like he has to interject into. It's like, I know things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also shows just how difficult a journey belief can be.
Yeah.
And I think that can connect into with what Emma was saying earlier, of that like sometimes what you need to do is see the signs that are right in front of you, and it's super hard to want to look for those sometimes, or seriously want to look for those. Like I know like there's kind of like the joke of like, God, send me a sign. Okay, God, send me another sign. Okay, I definitely need a third sign. And it's like that type of thing.
That was a little bit
Yes.
a little bit ambiguous. Do you think you could try again?
Exactly. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of that in this story. And a lot of that quest for meaning comes from trying to figure out like what to pay attention to for is where I'm at currently with that thought process. Sometimes I start sentences and I don't know where they're going to end. But
Thanks, Michael Scott.
Yeah.
No, I agree though. So one other religious reference, I guess, that I didn't initially realize was a religious reference, but then I looked it up and was like, what? The Angelus, which we see in the book as like a carved cathedral door. But I looked it up and it is apparently a Catholic devotion commemorating the Incarnation. So I don't know if Emma has anything more to say on that.
I didn't even know that. So no.
Okay. You would have been the most likely one
Yeah.
to know, so I didn't know.
I have no comment other than there's a lot of Catholic stuff out there that I don't know much about. So
That's fair.
I feel like that could
more
be a
than me
t-shirt.
though.
there's a lot of Catholic stuff out there I don't know a lot about. Ask
So-
me about it today.
I don't know. I just found that interesting, and because I feel like Neil Gaiman didn't name anything arbitrarily.
Mhm.
Nah.
So I'm kind of wondering what the significance of it is, but I haven't figured anything out necessarily. So something to ponder, maybe.
Mhm.
All right. Did anything else stand out to you?
I do have a quote that I meant to mention as one of my favorite quotes that I'm going to mention here. And it was, I think he was talking about, it may have been Hunter, but I don't quite remember. But it's, Richard was thunderstruck. It had been like watching Emma Peel, Bruce Lee, and a particularly vicious tornado all rolled into one and sprinkled with a generous helping of footage he had once seen on a wildlife program of a mongoose killing a king cobra. That was how she had moved. It's just this one long run-on sentence describing something, with a strange combination of things. And it was just like, it goes back to what I was saying about the way he describes things within this world. Is just like, I would have never put it that way, but I totally get what you're saying here. But yeah, this is just another one of my favorite quotes.
One thing that kind of stood out to me was like that no one went there with this idea that, you know, when Islington, big guy, big bad, you know, he's trying to get the key to heaven. It's like, well, what happened if he got there? It's like,
You would have taken
it's
over.
like if Lucifer's real and he failed, no, would he have though? Like if all this is real, that means our big numero uno still ruling in heaven. What's gonna happen if Islington shows up? He's not taking over, I promise you. Like,
right.
It's like
he would
all
have
the
attempted
decisions
to
are
take over.
Yeah,
That's the
all
thing.
the decisions
he would have
are
attempted.
inconsequential. This is not Diablo 3.
Right, and like and going back to what I said earlier on, it's one of the things that's really interesting about the stakes in this book. Because what are the stakes? Like, really, like to your point there, and kind of to like even to kind of the more like local things of like what really would have happened had they failed. And I do
He
think
gets a
that,
desk
like,
job. That's why.
yeah, I mean, they succeeded and he got a desk job. So like,
no, I mean, Islington does. He ends
okay.
up back. He's like, it's like they let you. We're not gonna deal with you. You could go do the paperwork.
Yeah.
He's like, oh man, after all that, this is what I'm stuck doing.
Yes.
Lucifer was an idiot.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Because what are the actual stakes here? It's like, I mean, like I understand his plan. I don't see this working out for him. So if I was Dora, I'd be like, sure, go deal with these people. let's see how you're greeted. Like just like.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it goes back to that theme of like the journey of belief. It's like I guess with Richard, he's new to all these themes. It's like Islington's real. Okay, I see him here now. Okay, I understand his plan now. Don't let him do it. And whereas like I guess maybe from our point of view, it's like okay, well this just solidifies my current belief. You're not getting very far, dude. Go try. Good luck. Already said a prayer, warned him, you're good.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think I have anything more to say than what we said. I guess kind of with the exception of I wish we would have gotten a bit more of Hunter. Like especially like Janine was streaming on Tuesday when I got to the part where Islington was the bad guy and was the one that hired them. And then there's the second double cross with Hunter also being the bad. And that like the motivation just kind of seemed like, okay, cool. So it's I can get the spear. It's like, okay. Like I just wish that was built out a bit more. It just felt a little short for me.
Mm-hmm.
He should have went all out in that triple, like for a triple agent trope.
Right. Yeah. And like, yeah, it was just one of those that I was like, I really liked Hunter and I would have liked to have had a bit more of build up for her and a bit more explanation besides I want to kill the beast. This is a spear that will help me kill the beast.
Yeah.
That was kind of my like most sad character moment, I guess.
Like I wanted that triple backstab. I got my spear now die. Now I got the spear. You're dead. Now I'm gonna go kill the beast.
To be fair, she is a lot more built out in the book than in the TV series, though. So,
Oh, that kind of makes me sad.
I'm researching the series now.
I mean, I definitely recommend watching at least like the first episode or two on YouTube.
I
It's
have it
just-
pulled up.
It's so cheesy, you guys. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention before, it has a young Peter Capaldi in it
As the bad guy.
as Islington. Yeah.
That is not a casting I would have expected.
No.
Yeah. It was a surprise.
Because he is introduced later, so it makes sense. He's like, what?
Okay, fun question to end us all off on. What world landmark would you want to go to for the market?
So I know this. I remember this being mentioned at some point in the book. I don't know if it was, or I don't remember if it was mentioned as like a place that the market happened. But the Tower of London was mentioned very briefly in passing, and that was a place that I was like, "Ooh, that would be a fun place to have the market." It was just the Tower of London. Let's go. Underneath this big bell tower.
Mhm.
So
Parliament.
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 And blow it up for Viva Vendetta. I'm just-
Yeah. That was also something I thought, like, go have the market at Parliament, and then, yeah, maybe some random guy in a
And
white
then
mask.
pass to
will,
London above, and a Guy Fawkes mask, and boom, and pass right back below. No, I'm just
Yep.
kidding.
Ta-da! Cat fingers.
I think for me, some of the ones are like more of like the very specific parts of things. So like the torch of the Statue of Liberty, things like that. Of just like what are these super random like locations, like the bottom of the Empire State Building, like so much just like the opposite of
The Queen's bedroom in Buckingham Palace.
yeah, exactly, stuff like that of like this like not just like these not just like the specific like or the broader locations, but like what are like the super random things that like you could have
Yeah.
this and like just things like that where it's like obviously you wouldn't be supposed to be, but like here we are just having this market with thousands of people. Like
You also have to give a shout out to just how the market works in general. Like, somebody tells somebody who tells somebody else where the market is, and that person tells somebody who tells somebody who tells somebody, but no one's really certain who the first person is who tells somebody else.
Who
It's just like
organizes
somebody
this thing?
knows, and then it's just like word of mouth, and it's just like
Does anybody
I don't
ever
know,
get the wrong
somebody knew.
information?
So it's just like somebody knows, and they'll ask enough people, and you will find out where it is.
And also that it's not really where it is, it's how you get to where it is.
Yeah. Just that was something I really appreciated. It's just like, okay. I see how you're doing this. You can't just go around. You have to go over.
All right. And lastly, would you read more by Neil Gaiman?
Yes.
definitely.
Done and done.
100%.
Have and will.
This is like, what do you think I've been doing this whole time?
Yeah. Definitely one of my go-to authors. So,
He's always releasing something too.
yeah.
Although I was researching, so like, the Seven Sisters was announced like in 2017, and then it was supposed to be out like last September, and then like all the orders got canceled.
Oh,
What are you doing, Neil?
Was that I
Possibly
don't know
living
anything
through a
about that.
pandemic.
yeah.
Where's this book? And we haven't like got like any new dates since then. Oh well.
Alrighty. Any other final thoughts?
Great book club.
Yay, book club.
Yeah, I'm really excited we did this one.
But what are we doing for the next one?
The next one, we are doing a nonfiction, Not All Who Wander Spiritually Are Lost, a story of church by Tracy Rhodes.
Has nothing to do with Tolkien though. Sorry, guys.
No. Not directly.
Not directly.
Basically,
That's gonna be one of my
is-
gripes. Just throwing that out.
Of course. Just prepared to be bitter right from the start.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna enjoy it probably. I'm just gonna be like, just throwing this out there. Need more Tolkien.
So this is Tracy's experience of basically connecting with Jesus through all different church denominations and traditions. Kind of that no denomination has it 100% right, and we can find Jesus in many different church traditions. And it's her story of her journey of faith and church, as well as some stories from friends as well. So that will be on June 24th. I'm super excited.
Sounds great.
Also recommend following Tracy on Twitter. She is just super delightful and leads wonderful conversations.
A lot of the people who follow on Twitter are really wordy, Shanine. I bet they really loved when Twitter expanded the character count.
Probably. All right. So thanks for coming and hanging out at Book Club. We are One Geek 411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Come chat with us at our Discord server. Check out our Redbubble store. Shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. And watch live on our Twitch. And find the videos on YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out the website at onegeek411.com. I am the Hoot and Howl on Twitter and Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES, on Instagram.
I'm Himar Whittle.
I'm not prepared with an I.
And as always, I'm not so foreign.
Read a book.
Drink some tea.
Wash your hands, please.